So this is my completed mesh, and what I want to do now is to decorate the exterior. Now this is a bit like the reverse of decorating, say, a product, a cardboard box, where you start off with a flat piece of card and you mark on it the shape of the eventual object. This is known as the net, and then you decorate the net, fold it up into the object. So now we've got the object folded up, what we need to do is get at the net, and this is by a process known as UV unwrapping. Now quite a few of the objects that we create in Blender are going to be a bit more complicated than a simple cardboard box, so it does help if we break these things up into areas that will be fairly easy to flatten. Now in this case I've got my ship. I'm going to break it up by taking the front and the back off and flatten those up, and then the top and the bottom. Don't divide it up too much, otherwise you get it all very bitty. So what we need to do to divide it up is to mark seams. I shall start with the back. So I'm in edit mode now. I've got my line selection, the edge selection, and I want to select all of this. Now I could do it like this. I could select the first one by right clicking here, and I could go shift click all the way round. That works. Another method is to hold the Alt key. In this case I'm going to keep hold of the Shift key so I don't undo my selection, and this will select as many sections of the line as possible, and then that completes it. So I've got the back marked out now, and I'm going to go to the mesh menu, choose edges, and here I'm going to mark a seam, and when I deselect you can see it's in red. Do the same thing at the front. So I'm going to use the Alt key and right click to select as much as possible, and hold the Shift key and select that, and keep going round until I've got the whole thing selected, and again mesh, edges, mark seam, and deselect. Now finally I'm going to mark these two seams. I'm going to use the Shift click here because otherwise it's quite likely to go around the front and select those as well. So I'm just going to Shift click. Again, how you do it depends on the complexity of your model. It's best not to have it too complex. Right, and I'm going to mark that seam, and the same on the other side. Just deselect to make sure. Click, Shift click, and then edges, mark and seam. Right, so I've got all of my seams marked. The next thing is to explode the model. Now to do this I need to select the whole thing. So I'm just going to press A, and that means everything is selected now. And I go to the mesh menu and choose UV unwrap, and from the sub menu just unwrap, and lo and behold nothing seems to have happened. That's because we need to change the editor. We need a UV image editor. Now I'm just going to open up a new window. To do that I'm just going to point at this little area in the top right corner, and the cursor changes into a cross, and I'm going to drag it across, and this opens up a new window. Now if you're lucky enough to have a large screen you won't have this problem, but in here it's a bit crowded, I can't see anything. So I'm hovering in this window and I'm going to press N. That gets rid of the information, and I don't need the toolbar either, so I'm going to get rid of that. Now I'm going to change this editor from 3D view to UV image editor, and there's my unwrapped image. This is my net. It's okay. I don't quite like the way things are organized there, so I'm going to reorganize it. So move that across. Now there are a number of ways that you can select here, and they're down this corner here. This is to select the vertices, edges, surfaces, and this is called island select, which is probably the most useful here. So I'm going to select that, and what it allows me to do is if I right click here, it selects all of the points that are connected together, an island. Once I've selected it, I can press a number of keys. So if I want to move it somewhere else, I press G to grab, and then I'm not even pressing the mouse button, I'm just going to move it out of the way for the moment. I'm going to move this one down, so right click to select, G for grab, move it down. Right, this is the front of the ship. I'm going to move that up for the moment, and I'm going to move the top here in place, so select it again, G to grab, place. Right, this one I'm going to bring down. This is the back of the ship, grab, and I notice it's upside down, so I'm going to change that just for convenience. R will rotate it. Now if it's going too fast, I can hold the shift key and then I can rotate it by small amounts. That's fine. This is the front. It's again, I'll rotate that. Again, holding the shift key to limit it. The other thing is it's very small, so I'm going to press the S key and then I can scale it up there. See, it's still upside down, so I'll rotate it now. It doesn't matter whether you scale it, move it, because each one of these shapes is mapped onto the original model. We can see this if I just deselect by clicking A for all. If I go back to this model here and use the edge or face select, and then I select a particular face, we can see that face selected here. So each face is mapped into a particular part of that shape there. So it doesn't matter about scaling it at all. So again, select them all again, and we can see our UV layout. Right, that's fine like that. I'm going to export that as an image. So on the UVs menu, we've got at the top export UV layout, and this is going to be saved as a PNG. I'm going to call this ship UV. I've already got one of these, so I'm going to put it in another document, another folder, sorry. So let's create a new directory here. Let's folder demo, and I'm going to save the ship UV into that folder. Right, so now we have an image of these maps, and you can open this in a bitmap application such as GIMP or Photoshop if you can afford it. For design work, I prefer to use a vector application, so I'm going to open InkScape, which I've already got open here. Now I'm going to import the image I've just saved of the UV map. So I'm going to import, right, let's go on from there, and just my demo. And here's my ship UV. Open up. That's fine. Let's move it into place. Now I'm going to completely ignore this page layout. If it gets in your way or annoys you in any way, you can get rid of it by going to the File menu, Document Properties, and down here on the border section, Show Page Border, we can turn that off. Right, so let's leave that off. So this is going to be the shape that we're going to decorate. Now what we'll need is another layer. Let's name this one first of all. So I'm going to call this UV grid. I'm going to make another layer here. If you haven't got this layers menu, you can get it from the layer menu here. And choose layers, and then you get the panel. So it's a new one. I'm going to call this decoration. Call it anything you like, of course. Now I'm going to use this layer to create the images that I want, but I don't really want it to be on top of the grid, otherwise I won't be able to see the grids. So I'm going to move this layer underneath the UV grid, and I'm going to lock this, but before I do, I want to ensure that my final image is going to be the same size as the one I imported. So here in Inkscape, I'm going to create a rectangle of exactly the same size as the image. I want to change the fill and stroke. So if you haven't got the panel already, you can select it from here. I have got it just here, fill and stroke. And I'm going to have a no fill. That's fine. Now this happens to be on the wrong layer. So I'm now going to select this object. And I'm going to cut it from here. I'm going to go down to the decoration layer and paste it there. So I've got paste in place. So I know this is the limit of my picture now. Now to make sure nothing happens with the UV grid, I'm going to lock it. So I've got a padlock icon there. And keep the decoration open. So I've got this decoration layer selected. So this is the one I'm working on. Right, so I'm going to decide now what color I'm going to do things. So I'm going to create a rectangle first of all. And I'm going to big box around those two. You have to make sure it doesn't go outside the bounding layer. And now I can decide what color I want my spaceship to be. Let's go to solid color. I think I'll do this one. Angry red. Yep, that'll do nicely. Now, the back, I'm going to do that as black. Now you notice I'm not attempting to keep inside the shapes at all. It doesn't matter because anything that's outside the shape is ignored. So I'm going to turn that into black, and I'm going to do a bit of decoration on it now. So down here, I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm just going to zoom in on that, so holding the control key, because I'm going to make this into a more interesting shape than that. So the first thing to do is I'm going to change it from an object to a path, which allows me to create new nodes. So let's create one there. So I'm going to just go position it, double click, and that creates a node. One there. One there, one there, and one in the middle. Right, so these two I'm going to change into smooth curves. That one. And these ones I'm going to move around so I've got this shape. There we go. So I'll move that to the back. I'm just going to change the direction slightly. There we go. And I'm going to do the same with this one. Try and keep it nice and symmetrical. Right, I'm going to open up these as well. So I'm going to create a new node up here. Move that up there. And another one here. Move it into that corner. A new node here. And double click again. Now I'm going to take this one up there. Okay, that's not a bad decoration. Right, the color of that, I'm going to change the color. So we've got red, let's make it blue maybe. It's not bad. Have a cockpit as well, I think. So I've got my ovals tool here, so I'm going to select that and make that black, I think. So back to black. And I'll add a filter to it as well. Sort of a bevel. And I'm going to make that button bevel. There we go. Maybe. It'll do. Right, I'm going to add a little bit of text on there as well. So it's just going to be out here somewhere. This is going to be a Defender craft. Right, it says my text. Just increase the size of that. I decreased it. That's about right. So I'll move that onto the ship and rotate it. Clicking again, I can change that into the rotation mode. More rotation. That's fine. And I'll copy that onto the other side as well. So Control D to duplicate that. Then rotate it again. That's enough for the top. I'll just do a bit on the bottom as well. So I think I'll just do some little rectangles on the bottom, like landing panels or something. And just add a filter to that. Another bevel, I think. Yeah. And I'll Control D, duplicate that one. Keep it level. Right, so I'll make the front the same color blue as this. So I'm just going to put another rectangle over the front. Right, and I'm going to change that color to the same color here. So I'm going to use the eyedropper here. Is that one? Okay, and that's fine. So that's the decoration for my ship. So the next thing to do is export this as an image. Now, I don't want to have the outlines in the image. So I'm going to go back to the Layers menu. And I'm going to just turn off the UV grid so we can't see it. Then I'm going to select everything and export that as a PNG. Right, so I need to define where I'm going to keep it. Find my folder. In the demo folder with the rest of them. I'm going to call this decoration. And finally export. I never get used to this. I always think I've exported it, but it's not done until I click that button. Right, back to Blender. So here's my UV image. I'm going to import the decoration on top of that. So image, open image, and let's go back to demo folder and open the ship decoration. And it should match it perfectly, and it does indeed. So that's done. I can go back to my 3D editor here. If you want to close this window, simply go to the corner and just move it to the right. You'll see an arrow, and that closes it. Right. So I'm going to go back to object mode, and now you can see nothing, but I need to change the object rendering. So instead of having it as solid, I'm going to choose texture, and there's my decorated ship in the colors I wanted. This is colored, but I need to put a lamp down here to show it. Just add another lamp, and there you can see the decoration underneath. It looks a bit lumpy. I can improve that by changing it into a smooth rendering. Just going to select it and change it to smooth shading. That rounds it off quite nicely. Right, we're going to add some bits and pieces to that, but that's enough for now.